I never imagined that a moment of happiness could shatter so quickly. Noah let out his first cry, a raw sound but beautiful to the point of choking me up. I cried along with him, not from pain, but because I had finally touched the most sacred thing a woman could feel, bringing a tiny life into the world. "Congratulations," Dr. Grant said softly, placing the baby, wrapped in a white blanket, on my chest. A healthy baby boy, 7 pounds 8 ounces. I looked up at Ethan, waiting for his gaze. The way men who are first-time fathers usually look at their child. Stunned, happy, overwhelmed, and emotional. But Ethan was not like that. He only looked at Noah for a few seconds, his gaze cold and strange. No joy, no emotion. Just a stare, as if he were assessing an expensive item that had been delivered in the wrong model. And then he spoke, his words light, but enough to freeze everything around me. "This boy. He looks too perfect. It's making me start to doubt if he's really mine." The room seemed to freeze. Noah's cries still echoed, growing weaker, as if lost in the heavy silence. I turned to look at him, thinking I had misheard. "What did you just say?" Ethan still didn't look at me. He turned to Dr. Grant, his voice steady. "I want a DNA test. As soon as possible." I felt the blood drain from my body. My mother, Margaret, was standing beside me, suddenly gripping my hand so tightly it hurt. I saw her eyes harden, her lips pressed tight, as if trying to swallow a curse that had just risen up inside her. But I couldn't swallow. "You doubt me. Ethan, are you doubting that I just gave birth to your child?" He turned to me, the first time since Noah was born. No regret. No explanation. Just a cold stare like steel. "I'm not saying I doubt you. I just want confirmation." Froze. I no longer felt any physical pain. There was only a numbness running down my spine as I realized the first moment of my family had died the instant it began. I used to believe that the time spent at home with my baby would be the happiest of my life. But then, just a few days after returning from the hospital, I started to feel that something was wrong. Not with Noah, but with Ethan. He acted as if the conversation in the delivery room had never happened. He didn't mention the DNA test, didn't ask about the results, didn't offer an apology for planting doubt at the very moment I was most vulnerable. He changed Noah's diapers, carried him when I was tired. He even bought a fancy new bottle warmer that almost brought me to tears with gratitude. But I started to notice something strange. He never kissed Noah. Not on the forehead, not on the cheek, not on the tiny hands that clung to his finger, as if holding on to this world. He only looked at him, quietly, for longer than usual, as though he were assessing something that couldn't quite be named. I had seen that look before. In the eyes of investors when they reviewed a new product design. In the eyes of a teacher when examining a test paper with unusually wrong answers. It wasn't the look of a father gazing at his child. It was the look of doubt. That afternoon while I was nursing Noah, the phone rang. My mom was at the supermarket, and Ethan was on the phone with someone on the balcony. The screen showed an unknown number, so I answered. "Is this Claire?" "I'm Rachel, the nurse who was on duty when you gave birth." Her voice was soft and hesitant. "I'm not calling to bother you. It's just, I wanted to let you know something small." I held my breath. There was a little mix-up with Noah's hospital wristband. It was mislabeled for about an hour after birth. But I noticed it and corrected it before I handed him over to you. A long silence followed. I could hear my blood rushing in my ears. "I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier." When I checked again, everything matched up. But with what I heard in the delivery room that day, "I think you should know." I nodded, unsure if I was even breathing. After the call, I walked over to the crib. Noah was asleep. His lips slightly curved as if dreaming of something warm. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I asked myself, if his wristband was wrong for just an hour after birth, is it possible my baby was ever mixed up? That thought hit me like a cold, thin blade. Not because I doubted Noah, but because I was beginning to doubt the very world I was living in. And the worst part was, I couldn't tell anyone. Not my mom. Not Ethan. Especially not Ethan. I began waking up every night, listening to Noah's breathing, examining every birthmark, every strand of hair, every gaze. Did he look like me? Like Ethan? Or someone else? I don't know if I was losing my mind. Or if I was finally starting to see the truth. I can't remember the last time I slept peacefully. Maybe it was before Noah was born, or maybe it was before that cold moment when Ethan demanded the DNA test. Since that day, everything around me felt like it was wrapped in a thick fog. I looked at my husband and suddenly saw a stranger. Ethan still acted like usual. In fact, he was almost overly kind. He made coffee every morning, changed Noah's diapers, kissed me on the forehead before leaving the house. But it was this very consistency and perfection that suffocated me. It was no longer love. It felt like a role he was playing, calculated and executed at just the right moments. I started to pay attention to the small things. The bits of stories that were never fully told. The long silences after questions that seemed innocuous. For example, when I decided to make a family photo wall for Noah, I rummaged through all the drawers, cardboard boxes, and old photo albums of Ethan, but I couldn't find a single picture from his childhood. No pictures from his first day of school. No birthday photos, camping trips, graduation pictures, or photos with his parents. Nothing. That evening, while he was reading emails in his office, I asked, "Don't you have any pictures from when you were a kid?" He didn't look up. They were all burned in the fire when I was 10. My mom died in it too. Froze. Partly because of what he said and partly because I had never heard this before. I slowly sat down next to the desk. "Have you ever told me that story?" This time he looked up. His cold gray eyes met mine, not angry, not emotional, just a defensive, well-hidden guard. "I must have. A long time ago. It's okay if you don't remember." I gave a weak smile and nodded, as if I were convinced. But deep inside, a chill crept in like a shadow. Not because of the fire but because of the way he said it. Like, he had been preparing for that question for a long time. Since that night, I began to record everything that made me question things. The mismatched pieces. The gaps in his life story. And deep inside, I began to wonder, how well do I really know the man I married? I don't know if I'm becoming paranoid, or if my intuition is finally doing its job. But that morning when Ethan said he wanted us to do the DNA test, for both our peace of mind, I felt something was terribly wrong. His voice was calm, so calm it sent a chill down my spine. "We should do it soon, Claire. Just to put all those silly doubts in my head to rest. And so you don't feel offended anymore." I nodded, smiled, even took the initiative to schedule the appointment. But inside I had already decided. If Ethan is playing a game of chess, then I need to know the rules. That afternoon I called the hospital, not to ask about the test, but to request a copy of Noah's birth certificate. I told them it was for insurance purposes. But the receptionist seemed confused, asking me over and over, "You said you want the original birth certificate for Noah Bennett?" Sorry, could you wait a moment while I check?" They had me wait for nearly 10 minutes before returning with a bland response. "The data is currently stored internally. Please submit a request form and meet with the chief director in person." An unusual request. And I knew exactly what that meant. For people in the medical field like my mother, that meant something is being hidden. That night, Ethan went out for a networking dinner. I stayed home, sitting by Noah's crib, listening to his soft breaths in the dark. Part of me feared I was going too far. The larger part, more overwhelming, feared that I had let a stranger into my life without realizing it. I walked into Ethan's office. The safe embedded in the wall behind the oil painting he always said was a memento from his trip to Italy suddenly seemed too conspicuous. I had never seen him open it, but I clearly remembered how he would knock 3 times, turn it gently, and then the faint click would sound. I tried it exactly the same. And when the door popped open, my heart skipped a beat. Inside, besides a few stacks of documents and passports, there was an old wooden box. Opened it. A picture, wrinkled and yellowed, was pressed in a thin plastic cover. The picture showed a boy about 8 years old, with brown hair and gray eyes exactly like Ethan's. Next to him was a woman, young, sharp, but not someone I had ever seen in any photos at his house. Not the mother who died in the fire like he had told me. I looked closer and turned the photo over. There was smeared handwriting under "For Marcus, love you, Jen." Marcus. Not Ethan. I don't know which part made me shake more. That completely unfamiliar name, or the fact that the man I married might not be the person he said he was. And I started to understand. Everything I've been living for the past 2 years could be a plan that was set up long ago, and I was just a pawn in the middle. I once believed in the simplicity of love. Now I know. Sometimes love isn't the beginning. It's the beautiful mask that hides the darkest things. I never thought I would call Lucas. I had saved that phone number under the name Past, just to remind myself that some things are better left alone, where they've been forgotten. But that night, after seeing the old torn photograph in Ethan's safe, the photo of a boy standing next to a woman who wasn't his mother, I felt like I had no other choice. Lucas was 10 minutes late, and I almost left. But then he appeared with that same look in his eyes. Gentle, calm, and slightly sad, just like the last time we said goodbye in high school. "Claire!" He called my name, and just like that, the past flooded back. We sat in a secluded corner of the small cafe. I didn't beat around the bush. "Ethan Cole. What do you know about his past?" Lucas stared at me. 1 second, 2 seconds, then he sighed softly. "I know him. From when we were kids." I held my breath. "They used to be my neighbors," Lucas continued. His father, Dr. Benjamin Cole, was the head of the medical department at St. Andrew's Hospital. A medical scandal ruined their entire family. I could hear my heart pounding. That name, St. Andrew's Hospital, I'd heard my mother mention it many times. "Go on," I whispered. "There was a drug causing serious complications, but he kept prescribing it. More than 12 people died. The one who exposed him was a nurse, Margaret Bennett." Froze. "After that," Lucas said slowly, "he lost his license. Unable to handle the pressure, he committed suicide in prison. Ethan's mother passed away a few years later from a stroke. Ethan disappeared after that." Chill swept over me. So cold I had to wrap my arms around myself. It felt like I was living in a dream, one carefully orchestrated by someone, step by step. My marriage. Ethan's cold stare at Noah. The offhand comment in the delivery room. "This boy is too perfect to be his." Nothing was a coincidence. Not a single thing. I looked at Lucas, my voice trembling. "Do you think Ethan married me for revenge?" Lucas didn't answer right away. But his silence was the answer. I stood up, my head spinning. Outside, the rain began to fall. Raindrops as if they wanted to wash away the truth that had just been uncovered. But it had already embedded itself in my mind like sharp, cold thorns. When I got home, I saw Noah sleeping peacefully in his crib. His little face was the only thing keeping me from breaking down. If this is a war, I won't let myself be the one who loses. I stood before the desk, the warm yellow light casting a glow on the papers in front of me. The feeling, these papers with the divorce papers and evidence I had gathered, felt like a decision that had been written a long time ago, just waiting for the right moment to be executed. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the pen and signed the paper. I knew what I was doing, but the pain couldn't vanish instantly. Ethan came home late like every other day. He walked in with a neutral expression, completely unaware that everything was changing. I didn't want to appear weak, so I simply looked up at him coldly. "Is there something you need to tell me?" I said in a calm tone, though inside, a storm of anger raged. He paused for a moment before responding in a low voice. "What have you done?" I knew that question wasn't about what I had done, but rather an inquiry, a suspicion about what I knew. But this time I wasn't afraid. Do you think I'm not strong enough to fight back? I stared at him, no longer the weak wife he once knew, but a woman who had uncovered the truth. I placed the documents on the table, right in front of him. Evidence. Noah is your son and mine. The DNA test you wanted, it doesn't change the truth. But do you want me to live in doubt for the rest of my life? You can't control me anymore. Ethan looked at the papers, and I could see the shift in his eyes. First came confusion, then anxiety. But finally something cracked. You did a DNA test. Not just one, I replied, my voice still cold. I'm not letting you control my life anymore. I've sent everything to the lawyer. Divorce. No contact with my son. As those words left my mouth, I didn't feel fear anymore. On the contrary, I felt like I was doing the right thing. It was as if a burden had been lifted, and I could finally breathe again. But that didn't mean I didn't see the panic in his eyes. Claire, you can't do this, he said, his voice trembling. Not to me. Not to Noah. For the first time I saw him vulnerable. But I didn't change my decision. You didn't hesitate to hurt me and my son. This is the price you have to pay. I walked away, leaving Ethan in the room, filled with silence and panic. I no longer cared about him. There was only one thing that mattered now. Noah. And I would protect that boy from anyone, even if it was his biological father. The next day, I sent the divorce papers and the official request, denying Ethan any rights to Noah. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the woman who would just endure. I sat quietly by the window, the faint light of the sunset casting its glow over the room. Noah was still sound asleep in the next room, breathing steadily, as if this world had never fallen apart. But inside me, a storm was raging. Ethan had come to find me that afternoon while I was cleaning the living room. He stood at the door, looking at me with eyes filled with a mixture of fatigue and disappointment. It wasn't disappointment in me, but in himself, the man who couldn't carry out his own plan. Claire, can you listen to me just once? His voice was hoarse. Not for you, but for Noah. His words made me pause. I looked into his eyes, no longer the cold gaze of the man who had hurt me, but a vulnerable look, as if he was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether he could step back. Do you think you can change everything with just an apology? I couldn't suppress the anger in my voice. You've broken everything, Ethan. Not just my trust, but everything. Do you think just because you ask, I'll forgive you? He lowered his head, disappointment clear on his face. I was wrong. I know that. But it wasn't for you, Claire. I did everything for Noah. I couldn't bear to see a child who looked like me but wasn't mine. That's the truth. I felt like a knife had pierced my heart. So what did you do all this for? To make me live in doubt for the rest of my life. Do you know the pain I've had to carry? Do you know that every day I live in fear of what you might do next? He fell silent. His eyes were on me, and I couldn't read them anymore. He spoke again quietly. I don't have a family, Claire. I have nothing but what I've built. And when I found you and Noah, I thought I had found something I could hold on to. But I was wrong. I sighed, standing up from my seat. I didn't know what to do with everything he had just said. Was it all just a game, an experiment he couldn't let go of? No, I couldn't let myself be deceived again. And then, something I hadn't expected came. Lucas called me, his voice full of tension. Claire, I just found something else about your mother. You have to listen to me. I felt my heart tighten. My mother. What did she do? It's not her, but a secret she's been hiding. About Ethan's father's death, Lucas said. His voice filled with doubt. She knew about it. And this could change everything. I stood frozen, unable to speak. Everything I knew about myself, about my family, could now be torn apart. The feeling of loss and confusion overwhelmed me. Ethan may have hurt me, but this pain, this truth, could either push me to the brink or help me rebuild my life. But I wouldn't let myself be deceived again. Nothing was certain anymore, but I knew one thing. I had to uncover the truth, not just for me but for Noah. The house was silent like a cemetery. I stood by the window, staring outside, not knowing what I was searching for in the cold winds of autumn. My life seemed to have spiraled into a whirlwind, and I had never felt so exhausted. Ethan had come, still in his dark clothes, but this time there was no coldness, no calculating confidence like before. He walked in without a word, sitting down across from me, keeping his distance as if afraid that any sudden move from me might make him vanish. We didn't speak for a long while, but I knew that in his mind, everything was unfolding differently. "You don't have to say anything," he spoke, his voice low and steady. "I just want you to understand that everything I did, it was all for Noah." I gave a dry laugh, unsure of how to respond to his words. Each sentence of his felt like a thin blade piercing my heart. How many times had I thought about this betrayal, the wounds he had caused? But now, hearing him speak, I didn't feel satisfied. Felt pain. "For Noah?" I asked, my voice unable to hide the sarcasm. "What about me, Ethan? My love, my trust, were they not worth anything to you?" He turned away, not answering. Only heavy sighs filled the silence, as if he were worn out by everything he had done. "You don't understand," he said, lowering his head, as if looking at his own hands, unable to find salvation in them. "You and Noah, you both are everything to me. But I was wrong. I let hatred, loss from the past overshadow everything. And I don't know what to do to fix it." I couldn't say anything more. His apology no longer held any power over me. The wounds he had inflicted couldn't be healed by words alone. I was too tired, too exhausted with all the explanations. "You can't change the past," I whispered, my eyes burning. "But you can change the future. Let me and Noah be at peace." Ethan remained silent, then finally he looked up at me, his eyes deep, full of despair. "So what do you want? For me to leave, right?" I couldn't believe what he had just said. He accepted it that easily. But I knew this wasn't the end of everything. I needed to protect Noah, I needed to protect myself. "Yes," I replied, my voice calm, as if I felt nothing at all. "You need to leave for good. Never come back into my life or Noah's. If you agree, I won't press charges. All the secrets of the past will never be revealed." He didn't say anything for a long time, just looked at me, his eyes carrying a fierce storm within them. Finally, he stood up, took a small envelope from his pocket, and placed it on the table in front of me. "This is the last letter I'll write to you," he said, his voice dry. "And this is how I'll leave." He turned and walked toward the door, leaving me in the heavy silence. The door closed, and I felt as though a part of me had shattered too. I looked at the letter in front of me, my hands trembling as I opened it. Inside was a short message, full of surrender. "Claire, I'm leaving. I don't deserve you or Noah. But I hope you'll find the happiness I took from you." The letter slipped from my hands. I didn't know what to do. Was this the end? Could I truly move past everything he had done? But in that moment I realized one thing. Even though Ethan had gone, the wounds within me and Noah remained. And I would have to learn to live with them, even if they would never completely heal. But I would protect my son no matter what. 2 years had passed since I decided not to press charges against Ethan and kept silent about our past. Life had returned to a peaceful rhythm, and I could feel the serenity I had been searching for all this time. Noah was growing every day, his bright eyes full of innocence that I hoped would remain forever. We lived in a small house by the coast of Maine, where the waves rolled in like old friends, comforting and soothing the wounds in my heart. I stood by the window, watching the rippling waves, and a feeling I couldn't describe swelled inside me. This was the first time I truly felt free, no longer burdened by the secrets and lies that had followed me for so long. All of that seemed so distant now, like clouds drifting away in the wind. Noah was playing in the yard, his laughter echoing through the quiet house. I couldn't help but smile as I watched him so happy, no longer carrying the doubts and shadows of the past. Yet even so, deep inside I still felt that something was unfinished. The past never truly lets go. One day, as I was tidying up the house, I received a letter in the mailbox. At first I thought it was just a regular letter, but when I opened it I stopped breathing. A baby bracelet lay neatly inside the envelope. The number on the bracelet was the exact birth date of Noah. My heart raced, and old memories of Ethan, of promises and lies, came rushing back. Who had sent this gift? Why was it the bracelet that I thought I had left behind for good? I stared at the bracelet, my hands trembling as I realized that perhaps my past with Ethan hadn't truly ended. Even though he had left, maybe he had always been watching me, or perhaps it was just someone else trying to awaken memories that had never truly slept. A wave of anxiety overtook me, but I couldn't allow myself to fall apart. No matter what, I still had Noah, and I would protect him from anything that could destroy our lives. Finally, I placed the bracelet in a drawer, locking it away as a symbol of my determination. Life might bring surprises, but I knew I had learned how to face every challenge. And no matter what that bracelet carried with it, I wouldn't let that past continue to control my future.